Hello and welcome to Beyond the Ordinary. Today I'm going to talk about the Ascension series by Leigh, Clarke and Michael Anderle. This is a box set that I've been reading of 12 books featuring a group of characters that is fairly consistent through most of the books. It starts off with a particular young lady called Molly Bates, who is, how would I phrase this? She's genius level intellect. She's very poor at interacting with people, so probably somewhere on the autistic spectrum type of personality, although not far enough on the autistic spectrum that she's incapable of operating in society. He's particularly poor at realising when people have emotions and how she should be dealing with those emotions and things like that. Right at the start of the book, basically, her brain and her attached computer system get hijacked, I suppose is the right word, by an artificial intelligence who ends up being called Oz, and most of the books is them as a sort of symbiotic relationship in a large extent. Although Oz doesn't control her physically in any way, he can use her brain to do calculations, and this is fairly important early on, but gets less important as the series progresses. Then also fairly on, after an incident, she ends up with nanocytes that give her body much better self-repairing abilities and also give her a whole load of not quite explained psychic abilities that she only uses a little bit and are only relevant in small portions of the book. And most of the time the books deal with her and a team of people that she manages to recruit, the first of which is Joel, and he does most of the recruiting of the other people, and he's basically a soldier. He convinces Molly to be more of the, say, major level of person, whereas he's kind of the captain level. And then they have a crew of, as the books progress, up to about 13, 14 people who have different abilities, whether it be a journalist who's used her investigative abilities and her abilities to defeat computers is used. There's another very good technical person, there's a very good engineering person, there's a couple other soldier types, one of which is mysterious in that he's part of the Federation, which is an organisation which is apart from the solar system that they are currently in, and it's a galaxy-wide, in fact bigger than galaxy-wide organisation dealing with lots of different civilizations. He's one of their super soldiers, so he's got all sort of cyborg abilities, and he has a mysterious past which is never explained in these books quite what he's done, but there are hints. So he could have been a very high powerful soldier at some point, we don't know. There's an Indiana Jones type archaeologist who appears later on. There is a person who's very good at administration. So all the different people who are needed to make a troop of, how would I put it, problem solvers. And there are all sorts of problems that are thrown into and which they cope with. And the problems get more and more difficult as they progress through the series. There's also this undercurrent story about the progenitors of various societies. So basically DNA is being spread throughout the civilizations of the galaxies, and there have been talismans and various other things left in different societies, and the archaeologist, who's called Giles, is the focus of finding out about these Forerunners Society, and then they trying to contact them. And the end of the book is when they actually manage to make contact and what they're trying to do at that point, which doesn't give too much away because that isn't the focus of the last book. It's in fact something entirely different, which is the main focus of the story. Again, I've read these books fairly quickly. There's 12 books. I read them in about 4 or 5 days, maybe 5 days. So they're not the longest books in the world. Michael Anderle, who's one of the co-authors, I've read a lot of his Brownstone books before, and whilst the character is nothing like Brownstone, there is a certain amount of style of Michael Anderle throughout the books which are so fairly high action and fairly low down on what if this happens. There's the other author. He is the person who's got the science background, so there's fairly reasonable amount of good quality science in this science fiction, and to be honest, the science fiction of it isn't unbelievable in any way. It's pretty good. You would think that with a good science author and a good action author you'd have a good story, and you would be partly right. What I have a problem with these books, and it got more of a problem as the books progressed, is the lack of actions and consequences, and the lack of following through with actions. So Sean, who is the super soldier, does things which are not only opposite to what Molly tells him to do, but they're flagrantly breaking trust, essentially. And nothing happens with that. If it were me who was in charge of him and he did things like suddenly disappear off without giving anybody any indication of what he was doing, whilst I would again try to rescue him, I would make sure that there were some repercussions for him doing that, but that sort of thing doesn't happen. Joel is and Molly are the big will they won't they romance in the book. Now, I don't know if you need the will they won't they romance at all, but if you do, and Joel has not been telling Molly how he feels about her, and Molly doesn't have the emotional intelligence to understand where Joel is coming from, even though he makes it blatantly obvious all the time, that's fine. But then Molly sleeps with one of the other members of the team, and other members of the team know about it, so Joel, who has shown himself to be a very good understanding of character and people, reacts absolutely not at all to this in any way, shape or form, which is absolutely ludicrous. I mean, apart from the fact that sleeping with your underlings is pretty poor anyway, when you've got somebody who's there over 12 books basically telling you how much they love you and will do anything for you, and you then go to sleep with somebody else, there's going to be a reaction. I mean, there isn't in these stuff. So this is where I have a problem with the books. don't follow through in the way that they should do. And then there are others problems like that. There's problems with Molly's parents which aren't followed through properly. There's problems with how the society acts that aren't followed through properly. There's problems with how the Federation acts that aren't followed through properly. Many things that you think that the authors should be addressing aren't addressed at all in these stories. And obviously they're hoping that keeping the action fast-paced makes you not think about this and wonder about it and say, why hasn't this happened? But if you've got the sort of mind that reads science fiction and fantasy books, you're likely going to think about these things and say, hang on there, why hasn't this happened? So this brings down the stories for me. They are moderately readable, but for me I would say I would only rate them about 6, maybe 6.5 out of 10. Thank you for watching. My name's Nigel and this is Beyond the Ordinary. It starts off with one particular lady, and now my brain has gone completely blank and I forgot what her name is, and that's what is rubbish about me. Okay. And we'll wait for the runner to go past.